Here today. This is Lily. So, this is the one, if you hear any scratching sounds in the background, Lily's having a hard time deciding if she wants to stay in the room with me or if she wants to leave because she knows my husband's getting ready to leave for work soon. Now she's going to be mad because I picked her up against her will. Oh, no, she's kind of hanging out. Ah, so she was having a hard time deciding if she wants to stay in the room with me or outside or in or out. So if you hear any weird scratching sounds, it's my dog Lily, and she can't make up her mind. Oh, she's going. Oh, nope, she's heading to the door. There's a good likelihood you're going to hear scratching sounds. Good morning. Today, I want to talk about confidence bias. And here's why. If you're a new play therapist, the likelihood you feel insecure or you don't have any confidence in your abilities and you question yourself all the time about what's going on, or you think you don't know what's going on, or maybe even sometimes you feel lost and overwhelmed once you get into the play therapy process and you're thinking, oh, I'll never get as good as so and so who's been doing it for 10 years. That's one of the reasons I thought this would be an important topic because it kind of balances out that difference in skill level between seasoned play therapists and new play therapists. So that's what I want to talk about today. Confidence bias. Does it really matter if you're a new therapist or a seasoned play therapist in terms of your level of accuracy in your clinical decision making? So, clinical decision making is essentially your analysis and synthesis of information that's going on with your client as you're gathering information, as you're going from session to session to session, and you're making decisions about what's going on and what needs to happen to help your client in the play therapy process, what's going on with parent engagement, how do you make decisions about engaging parents, what's going on with parents and their children. All of those are clinical decision making that we use to help guide us through the whole treatment process with clients in play therapy. And bias is a part of that process. It's not whether or not you have bias, it's what kind of bias do you have and how is it showing up? Which is why it's important to be aware of what bias is so that you can recognize when it shows up, be non judgmental. I kind of look at it the same way that I look at a countertransference. So transference and countertransference. It's not whether or not we're going to have a internal response or reaction to some clients more than others. It's a matter of when does it show up. And the key is, are you recognizing it? And then what are you doing with it? Because that actually gives really good information if we approach it in a non-judgmental way in terms of information gathering. So if you are watching me live today, go ahead and post your name in the comments. I would love to see who's here. What population do you work with? Where do you work? And are you new to the play therapy field? Are you seasoned? Feel free to hop in and ask questions. I'm Kathy Spooner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a registered play therapist supervisor here in the United States. And I have been working with children, adolescents, and families in mental health for the last 30 years. So for me, this was a really interesting topic as well, because I have been doing this forever. I do a lot of supervision. Right now, I have an online supervision program. And so in the program, we're sharing ideas, we're clinicians are presenting, they're learning how to do the play therapy process. And I find myself, I can get there pretty quickly about, oh, okay, this usually means this because I have 30 years of experience. That being said, though, it's important for me to recognize my tendency to have confidence bias as much as it is a tendency for new play therapists to have underconfidence bias. So let's get started. So first and foremost, what is confidence bias? So confidence bias is basically your level of confidence about your decision-making process and the judgments that you're making in the play therapy process about what's going on. And so what the research has shown is people who present themselves with a high level of confidence tend to help their clients or others feel like they know what they're doing, so they're inclined to go along with what that person says. So confidence bias is also something that's been studied for about 60 years, in one way or another, looking at, does confidence equate to accuracy? And that's the key. I can be really, really confident about something, and I feel like I'm correct. The problem is I may not be accurate. So if I'm confident and I'm not accurate, the problem in play therapy is, or any mental health field or any field in particular, is that I can lead my clients down the wrong path. I can focus on the wrong thing. For example, let's say I have a child coming in and the child is super thin. We'll see this sometimes with adolescents. And let's say it's an adolescent female. She's coming in. Your parents are bringing her to treatment with you to help with her mental health challenges. She comes in, she reports, oh, I don't feel like eating. I don't really have an appetite. And you see her weight and you automatically make the assumption that she's got an eating disorder. That's bias unless you go through all of the questions and assessment process. Could be informal, going through your biopsychosocial assessment, or you ask a lot of questions to better understand what are the roots of this problem. Because we also know that anxiety can impact somebody's appetite. And if you ask more questions, what you may find out is your client actually has anxiety and not an eating disorder. And I've seen that happen, making those judgments about a situation, and then you're focusing on an eating disorder that really isn't the problem, because the problem is anxiety. And if you're not figuring out what's activating the anxiety and what's going on with that anxiety, then your client is not really going to get better, and you may be creating a whole nother problem. So, and that's why it's important to recognize bias. And if you're a new play therapist, that's one of the benefits that you have, is you're not necessarily going to be prone to confidence bias. You may be prone to underconfidence bias, which is what we're going to talk about. But being a new play therapist doesn't necessarily mean that you don't know what you're doing. One of the things that I talk about a lot in my online play therapy program, Play Therapy Academy, is helping new play therapists recognize their strengths, because we have an amazing group. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it at the end of this, because I am opening up a new cohort in Play Therapy Academy. What I found though in supervising play therapists for the last 15 years is I learn as much from the people that I supervise as they learn from me. And I think that's one of the things that helps me not necessarily be as prone to confidence bias as I could be, because I do supervision and consultation with new play therapists. And where we have this play therapy academy group, so it's a group that meets twice a month, and you get to hear other people's input and insights. And I think that's one of the benefits that we have in the mental health profession, is that we do like to seek consultation with others, because we want to make sure that we're aware of any bias or countertransference, and we have a place to process through that. So there's this thing called heuristics. So if you this is one of the terms that I found as I did some research in clinical decision making, because I have a course that I've developed. It's coming out soon. I'm hoping it'll be out next week. It's called Getting Grounded in Play Therapy, Case Conceptualization. Because, like I said, if you're not conceptualizing accurately, then your treatment planning is going to be faulty, which means you're not going to get as good of treatment outcomes as you want to for your client. So being aware of case conceptualization and that process to develop really strong case conceptualization skills and play therapy is a core competency for play therapy. So this term heuristics means, according to the Cambridge Dictionary online, heuristics is a method of learning or solving problems that allows people to discover things themselves and learn from their own experiences. And then Wikipedia says, in psychology, heuristics are simple, efficient rules either learned or incalculated by evolutionary processes. These psychological heuristics have been proposed to explain how people make decisions and come to judgments and solve problems. These rules typically, reading from my card, typically come into play when we face complex problems or incomplete information. So you can see how that plays a role with our clinical case conceptualization, but also how clinical decision making plays a role. It has to do with the ways in which we come to judgments. They're kind of like shortcuts that we kind of take through our experience over time. So take somebody like me who's been doing this for 30 years. In my head, I automatically go and I can get there. And I'm usually somewhere in the ballpark, and I can pull everything together pretty quickly in my head. So, and that's a lot of what we do in consultation, is kind of pull information together and develop those skills to come to that case conceptualization. So you're hitting the right things in the play therapy process to get good outcomes. But the thing that we keep in mind is there's a way over time that we've learned to come to those decisions. And inherent in that process is what we call confidence bias. So there's that confidence heuristic is basically those shortcuts you take in order to come to a decision, and your level of confidence in that decision-making process. So in and of itself, it's not good or bad. It's just a thing. What we have to be mindful of in that process is any overconfidence or underconfidence in that process. So, and this is where you're developing your sense of confidence in your ability to analyze and synthesize information, come up with a solid understanding of what's going on with your clients, what your clients need in the treatment process, and how do you do that? Initially, when you're new, that's kind of a struggle because you do get overwhelmed. You're not sure what to look for. You're in the play therapy treatment process with your clients, and you're not necessarily knowing what to do next. This is where being in consultation with others, being in a in play in the Association for Play Therapy for their registered play therapy credential, to me, this is one of the key reasons why, in order to get that, our registered play therapist credential, you go through 3 phases under the supervision of a more seasoned clinician. And that's what we do in the Play Therapy Academy. We go through the process of change and what do you look for? How do you know what's what in there? How do you know what's going on with your client? Once you figure out what the roots are, how do you know what to do with that? That will begin to build your confidence in your abilities. That being said, we always have to be aware of holding out the possibility that I need to make sure I'm looking at this problem from all sides. There may be other explanations than the one I got to really quickly. I need to be able to step back. So that's overconfidence is essentially me being overly confident in my skills, and my confidence doesn't equal accuracy. It's one of the things that, like I said, the clinical decision making has been studied in the literature for over about 60 years, and in the article that I'm kind of referencing, the research article by Miller, Spangler, and Spangler that was in the Journal of Counseling in 2015, one of the things that they studied was looking at confidence and confidence level, does it equal accuracy? So they did a meta-analysis of confidence and judgment accuracy in clinical decision making. And what they did is they looked at 40 years of decision making research over time, and they found mixed results. So the prevailing wisdom in the decision making research field was that a lot of the research showed confidence didn't always equal accuracy, meaning seasoned therapists would often take shortcuts to come to a conclusion and make a judgment about a situation that wasn't that wasn't accurate, which means if it's not accurate, then there's a tendency for the problem not to be solved. In play therapy, that means there's a tendency that maybe you're not going to get the treatment outcomes. So this might, if you're a seasoned therapist, one of the things that is probably a good thing to keep in mind, if you're finding you're not getting the outcomes that you think you should be getting and your clients aren't being as successful, one of the things you may want to do is kind of take a step back and rethink what's going on and maybe look at things from a different lens in order to see maybe there was some confidence bias in there that kind of got you off track. And the other thing that the research showed that they looked at was there were some instances where confidence did equal accuracy. So there were mixed results over that research that they looked at over 40 years, because one of the things, I took my notes here. So what they found was, the research was studying, does confidence equal accuracy in judgments about client problems, diagnosis, treatment planning, and predicting future behavior? And there were mixed results about that. More often, confidence didn't necessarily equal judgment accuracy. What they also found was that um, more seasoned therapists, you're going to, so there's this balance because when if you're a seasoned play therapist that you are um, you're using your experience, which means you're tapping into your intuitive part, which I think there's an intuition in the play therapy process that is useful. So intuition is part of that judgment making process. The key the key that you have to think about and be mindful of is that accurate? Is your intuition on target? And that's an important thing to think about. The other thing to think about is underconfidence bias. This is usually the more inexperienced play therapist. You're just getting new. I remember when I was getting started 20 years ago in play therapy, I felt so inadequate all the time. I was regularly overwhelmed. I lived to go to supervision with my play therapy supervisor, also known as consultant, every 2 weeks because I needed that support. I needed somebody to help me figure out what was going on. And I felt like gold came out of her mouth every week. I was always amazed. And so what I learned through that is she supported my thought processing, helped me recognize things that helped me to develop my confidence. That, in addition to working with clients, developing my confidence, taking those steps back and seeing what was going on. So, the thing you have to keep in mind, though, is underconfidence bias can be just as much of a flawed self assessment as overconfidence bias, meaning you probably know more than you think you know. But if you're not giving yourself enough credit for what you do know, it can come across as being not confidence with your client, and then they may not feel like you're helping them get the outcomes they want to get, which is what your fear is. That's your fear. The thing that I think that's important for you is to take a step back and recognize that you do know more than you think you know. You will get there. You will develop that confidence. It does help to be in like we do a group live group meeting twice a month. And in the group meeting in Play Therapy Academy, the play therapists are building their confidence. They are hearing from me as well as from their peers. You actually know more than you think you know, which then the more confidence you have, then the more you'll feel like you can get good outcomes and you won't be overwhelmed by it as much as you tend to get overwhelmed by it. So that is overconfidence bias and underconfidence bias and the way in which it influences your treatment outcomes. So just to do a little recap, there are two types of confidence bias. Confidence bias is your level of confidence in your decision-making capabilities. So if you're you can have overconfidence bias, which means you actually think you are doing a better job than you are. Some of the research has shown that clinicians think they're getting really good outcomes, and that doesn't always match up with client assessment. In these research studies, clients aren't necessarily rating therapists as high as therapists think they're capable of being, which to me, that's a really good reminder to me. Wait a minute, I need to step back and kind of check in with my clients, see where they are, see what's going on, check in with parents about the process, invite them to give feedback. That is really, really important. Invite them to give feedback because if you look at it as we're in this together, I'm not the expert of your child. You are the expert of your child. We're going to do this together. I know things. I will pass on the things that I know, which is why you're coming, so I can be helpful in that way. That being said, we're doing this together because I need your feedback as much as you need my feedback. And so I think if we can approach it that way, confidence bias will will be more balanced out. The other one is underconfidence bias, where you just doubt yourself all the time. You don't have any confidence in your skills, and that can come across in the play therapy process, which I know that's what you usually worry about, which is why I would highly recommend getting into play therapy consultation or supervision because it can be helpful in order to gain that confidence in your skills as well as learning more skills along the way. And the other thing is um, play therapists, either seasoned or new to the profession, we are all prone to bias. And so it's really important to look at that bias and see what's going on with that. And then the third and final thing is be aware that confidence is based on your self assessment of your clinical judgment and decision making skills. So it's important for you to take a step back and make sure you are aware of any bias that you may have using a non judgmental self reflection process, because this isn't about are you good or are you bad? It's just recognizing that we're all human and we all have these biases, and those can influence the outcomes that we have in the play therapy process. And if you're a play therapist, the reason you got into this field is because you want to make a difference in the lives of children and in the lives of their family. This is this is a hard it's a hard process. It's a hard job. It's a rewarding job because when you see those changes, it's amazing. That's why we keep doing it. That's what gets us through those challenging times when we're feeling overwhelmed and maybe a little burned out and we may need to take some time off. That's the goal, is to get really good outcomes for your clients. So being aware of bias in your clinical decision making, being aware of bias in your case conceptualization is a really important thing. So that is it for today. Lately, I have been doing a lot of talking about case conceptualization and clinical decision making in the play therapy process, partly because it is a core competency in play therapy. So what we know about play therapy is understanding how to access those therapeutic powers of play for children is what sets play therapy apart from other expressive arts modality. With that being said, to provide competent play therapy means we need to develop skills. I personally think that case conceptualization in the mental health field is a really important topic that needs to be discussed and practice honing your skills on that, because the way in which you conceptualize what's going on with your clients and why is it happening will influence your treatment planning. And if you have bias in that process, it could mean that you're not targeting the right things in play therapy, and you may not be getting the treatment outcomes that you're hoping to get. So I created this course series called Play Therapy, Getting Grounded in Play Therapy Excellence. There are several courses. They're all individual courses. Right now, I have one that's already out. It's called Getting Grounded in Play Therapy Foundations. Really, what sets play therapy apart from other other expressive arts, and mental health models. What sets play therapy apart from those? What are the roots of play therapy? What are the competencies of play therapy? What are the ethical and cultural considerations for play therapy that you need to keep in mind? And then I also, some other things that I get asked all the time in the trainings that I do and supervision is, how do you talk to parents? How do you explain the play therapy process? So that's all in getting grounded in play therapy foundations. If you're interested in that course, you can find it on my website at rrhcounseling.com/courses. If you're watching on Instagram, you can pop over to my bio and click on the link. It'll take you over there. I do have the second course coming out, which that I'm hoping that one will be out next week. That one is getting grounded in play therapy case conceptualizations. And that one focuses on walking you through how to get a really solid case conceptualization so you know what's going on with your clients, why is it happening, what role does culture play in that problem, and identifying strengths to help you with your treatment formulation, meaning when you're coming up with your plan for treatment, how you're going to help your client get better, then you will make sure that you are hitting the right things so you can get those really good outcomes. One of the things that I found in supervising over the last 15 years is people don't always take the time at the very beginning to do that thorough assessment, do that case conceptualization. And then what happens is you're halfway through or somewhere in the play therapy process and you're feeling lost and overwhelmed and not feeling like your clients are making any progress. And it's kind of like you have to go back and redo something that you didn't do at the beginning. Whereas if you had done that in the beginning, it kind of creates that framework to help you make sure that you're getting good outcomes. And when you do get a little lost, like we all do sometimes, then you go back to your case conceptualization. You use your clinical decision-making skills to help you navigate through that process to get those great outcomes for your clients. So that course is coming out next week. You can stay tuned for that one. I will make sure to make that announcement. If you're interested in Play Therapy Academy is my online play therapy consultation program. In Play Therapy Academy, you're going to be developing all those core competencies for becoming an excellent play therapist. You're going to be using the support of some amazing play therapists. I'm always learning from the play therapists in Play Therapy Academy. And I'm going to tell you, it is humbling just to see the dedication and passion of the people in this group. I just love doing it. I just love learning from them as much as they like learning from each other and learning from me. In Play Therapy Academy are also all of these getting grounded in play therapy excellence courses. So that's part of the program. I made the courses separate because not everybody needs Play Therapy Academy. So they're kind of available a la carte, so to speak, outside of Play Therapy Academy. If you're interested in the trainings or the courses or any of my online courses, pop over to my website, rrhcounseling.com/courses. If you're interested in finding out if Play Therapy Academy is a good fit for you to help you develop that confidence and those really strong play therapy competency skills, then you can go over to my website. On the supervision page, click the link to schedule a free 30-minute consultation, a video call, to make sure Play Therapy Academy is a good fit for you. And I will see you next week.